Perfect. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much, Tracy. Awesome. Okay, so we've got a really brief athlete discussion here where it's about 15 minutes or 10 minutes or so with 5 minutes of questions. And the purpose of this talk is just to go into a little bit of detail with an athlete about sort of their experiences of psychology. We've got some questions to ask them, and you can, of course, ask your questions at the end as well. I'm going to repeat myself. I'm very sorry if people have heard this. Well, you've almost definitely heard this. Please remain muted. Please put questions in the chat or wait to the end and ask your questions there. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce, and I'm really sorry, Tomiwa. I'm going to try and say your name as well as I can. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm doing it in my best fashion. Tomiwa Agbongbon? Yes, okay, nailed it. It's my pleasure to introduce Tomiwa Agbongbon. He is a professional rugby player at Leicester Tigers. He's also a university student as well, studying maths, accountants, and finances at Loughborough University. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you. How are you doing, Tomiwa?
I'm good, thank you. We've got exams at the moment, so we've been revising for the best part of the morning, but no, I'm good, thank you.
Awesome to hear. So alongside myself and Tomiwa, we also have Adam Cousins, or cousin, sorry, mate. I always say
that's all right. Hey, Tomiwa.
I've only known you for 2 years, haven't I?
Yeah, that's all right, mate.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
So thanks for that then, Max. So just, to start with then, Tomiwa, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your athletic journey kind of up to now? How have you got to this point?
Okay, I'll keep it as brief as possible. I started playing rugby in year 9. I moved to an independent school, and I originally played football, and I got to this new school and they said, we don't play football here, sorry, here's a rugby ball. So okay, I'll give it a go. It helped that I was quite athletic, kind of grew into the sport from year 9 to year 13. Finished year 13, nothing could really come out of it. So I said, sure. I said, okay, I'm going to go to university, get a good degree. But I still had an interest for the sport. So I said, so I kind of looked at a university that would give me the best of both worlds. And I thought that Loughborough would be a good opportunity for me to do that. A good university that would give me the opportunity to do that. Went to Loughborough. About 2 months in, Leicester Tigers called and said they needed a physical back rower, and Loughborough were aware of the fact that that I'd mentioned to Loughborough that professional rugby was something that I was considering and would like to kind of take a look at. So they sent me in. A week in, Leicester Tigers were like, hold on, you've actually got something here. And yeah, and so since I signed in November, and looking forward to what will come.
Excellent. And Max, have you got a follow-up question to that, or should I? Is Max frozen there? I think Max is frozen, so I'll jump in. He gets nervous. So yeah, I mean, that follows on really nicely actually to kind of what my next question would be is, how do you find managing that role of being a student and a professional athlete? How have you been able to manage that? But also, how have your coaches helped? Well, hopefully helped with that kind of, those two roles that you've got.
I mean, yeah, no, it's definitely tough. I think my time management at the beginning of the year wasn't the best, but I've definitely had to work on that, and is now something that I can pride myself on a little bit better. The coaches definitely do help. So we have academy managers who kind of take care of that side of things. So for example, in exam season now, if I have an exam, then I'll get the day off. If I'm struggling with a particular module and I give them enough notice, then we can work and kind of work with that. I think it is tough. I would say it's necessary, but it's tough because obviously they're a business and they want the best for their business. So they're obviously going to want you in as much as possible training and development, because to them, you're an investment. Yeah, but I would say in terms of what's got me through the year, my time management and just communicating with my academy managers and my academy managers and my university, so that everything kind of runs smoothly and I can get any necessary adjustments that I need.
Yeah, and have you found? I mean, I think that's really interesting, and it's nice to hear like you said, the your organisation that you're working for are understanding that as well as the university as well. And has there been anything in particular, when you talked about communication there, when you've communicated with coaches that's helped that along, or have you found any difficulties along the way where, a club might understand the fact that you're trying to, juggle these things, and has there been any times where, you've found that a coach might want you to focus more on your rugby, or someone from the university side kind of is telling you, well, you need to work on your studies?
Yeah, I think you almost need to be quite vigilant, or kind of like stand your ground in a sense. For me, I think luckily, because I was at university first, and because of my parents, the university almost takes a little bit more of a priority than the rugby. And I've always had the mindset of if I'm good enough and I train hard enough, then the rugby side will sort itself out. But yeah, I think there's definitely been times where one side has kind of wanted me more than the other side, and I think it's part of it. I think, like life is going to demand many things from you, and different parties are going to demand many things from you. So yes, you will have to make sacrifices, but ultimately you learn as you go along, and you learn how the attitudes of the two parties, and how to manage your way through that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of then, how have you found that transition going from kind of amateur status, or being a very good university player, to okay, you're now in a professional setting? What have been some of those kind of changes or demands where you've seen this kind of step up? Because people talk about, very generally, they kind of go, well, it's a step up to this level. Well, can you tell us from your experience, what does that actually look like? What does that involve?
So I'll give you an example. So when I joined university, I'm currently a fresher because I took a gap year, and my week initially looked like Monday to Friday. You'd have lectures, potentially go out on a Wednesday, potentially go out on a Friday, chill Saturday and Sunday, probably have a game on a Saturday and then rest on a Sunday. And then as soon as I signed for Tigers, it was training full time on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And then as a senior academy player, you go in on a Wednesday to train. And I have a dual contract between Tigers and Loughborough. So I'd end up training on the Friday, playing on the Saturday for Loughborough, and then resting on the Sunday. So as you can see, there's a drastic difference between the two. And that goes back to the demands of each party and stuff like that. But I'd say in terms of that professional lifestyle, you spend a lot of time training, as you would assume. You spend a lot of time training, and there's almost less time to do things like going out, and especially if you're concentrating on your studies and doing the studies that you should be doing week in and week out, then there's definitely less time to go out. You do spend a lot more time asleep because you get back from long days and you need to go to bed. And even things like nutrition, I think your nutrition definitely needs to be a bit better, because you're going to need the energy for the next day, and you're going to need to recover from the day that you just spent training. So those are a few things that I think, as a uni student, from my friends that are at uni, I think I care a bit more about nutrition and sleep and that organization in comparison to if I was just a uni student living a uni life.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big shift. That's a big shift in just how your diary looks, I suppose. But what we've heard from other people in some other talks today is we've heard about this balance between well-being, and well-being means lots of things to different people as well, and then performance. How have you actually found that in terms of trying to balance and try and get this nice balance between well-being and performance. And by the way, this is something that could be, it's potentially tricky when people move to university, let alone move into a professional club and all of those kind of things. So, how have you found just balancing those things?
I think at first it was very hard. I kind of look back on it now, and I'm thankful for it. But it is very hard. I think, especially as a young person, like you almost forget that professional rugby, it's a job, and within the professional environment, there are stresses and certain kind of you're being demanded a lot more. So in terms of your well-being, then it's kind of, you have to look after yourself, and there are certain there's a certain mindset that you need to adopt that you wouldn't necessarily adopt if you weren't working. I think that in terms of my well-being now, I think I've had to learn to look out for myself a bit more. But I'm just trying to think how I'm going to word this. I think the more that's demanded of you, you kind of go through a patch where, okay, so you're at here, then things are demanded of you, and you kind of start to dip a little bit, and then you start to realize that things aren't necessarily where you want them to be, and then you start to figure out the ways in which those small things you can do in your day to day. For example, going to bed a bit earlier so you wake up tomorrow and you have a bit more energy to do the things that are going to be demanded of you. Like we said before, nutrition, time management, because if I haven't finished my uni work, then I'm not going to be able to train properly. Just kind of stuff like that. You learn little things along the road that you kind of add to your arsenal, and then by the end of the year, where I'm at now, I've kind of built my routine, and my well-being is at a place where I would say I'm quite happy with. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm sure, people are listening and enjoying some parallels to this, but can pick up some interesting tips along the way there as well. So, you're clearly a very motivated person. How have you found, is there anything along the way that has helped you in terms of try and keep that motivation, or anything that you've done where, you mentioned kind of little dips in things, and I'm sure maybe along the way, we know things aren't a linear path.
Yeah.
What have you done to help keep you motivated, or particularly during those times where you feel, because you might be that I want to focus on my studies a bit, or I want to focus on my rugby, or I want to just be a fresher and go out, which I see a lot of students. But how do you remain motivated to try and remove yourself from potentially a lot of distractions?
Yeah, I think the main thing is remembering kind of where you've come from. I think so. That for me, anyways, that's a big thing. Remembering why you play the sport and how you've got to where you've got to. So for me, it's like I said, I started rugby quite late, and so I faced a lot of challenges. And so being a fresher, being at university, taking a degree as well as being a professional athlete, that's just another challenge. And so it sounds a bit cliche, but it's almost like I've had to face a lot of challenges, and seeing it as a challenge that I can overcome almost motivates me. I think, again, there were great role models at Leicester Tigers. For example, a good role model for me has been Ellis Genge. Like, I always admire the intensity that he brings to sessions, and then that kind of model feeds into other areas of my life, because I can see the way that I can see how seriously he takes his profession, and it almost inspires me to do that in all aspects of my life. And it also does help that there are sports psychologists at Leicester Tigers, so you'll sit down and they'll help you go through things and make sure that you're okay and in a good state of mind. But yeah, I'd say in terms of motivation, just remembering why you play the sport, why you love the sport almost, and where you've come from, and that should hopefully keep you going.
Brilliant. And just a last question for me, and then we'll offer it out, because I'm sure the people have got questions. But I'm really interested in this idea of support, and you kind of mentioned about other players there. But we know that in order to kind of rise to challenges, that people need to be supported as human beings. We need people around. But what does that support look like to you along the way, Tomiwa, and what does that mean? How has it helped, or can it be a hindrance at all?
I think we don't realize it, but we actually get a lot of support from a lot of different areas in our life. So the main ones for me would be my family, just being able to talk to my mum and dad and talk to them about my problems, and they're not necessarily as well versed in the whole rugby professional world and whatnot, but they almost keep me grounded, kind of thing. So I'm not thinking about too much, or I'm only thinking about the things that I need to think about. Friends are also a great bringing support, just in terms of people you can talk to again. At Leicester Tigers, there are many avenues for support. There's actually a safeguarding team at Leicester Tigers, so if there's anything you ever need to talk to them about, then they're there. Again, I mentioned a sports psychologist. In terms of even nutrition, you have your nutritionist. So if you ever struggle with food or anything like that, and I know it may seem a bit weird that I mentioned a nutritionist, but if that's a little where like I said, those little things kind of add up, and if that's one area that you don't have to worry about because someone's supporting you with it, then it makes a big difference over time. I could carry on. We have your academy manager that is always a phone call away. He's always there to support you. Believe it or not, the head coach, Steve Wolfwick, lovely guy, doesn't really talk much. He can be seen to have a bit of a grumpy face, but he's always there. He's really supportive of the fact that I'm at uni and things like that. So it's all the little avenues of support that kind of come together and help me get through the challenges that I face day to day.
Brilliant, yeah, and that's that multidisciplinary approach, and we get support from lots of different places. That's brilliant. Okay, enough for me there. So I'll open it out. We've probably got a couple of questions, Tracy, we could ask from people.
Yeah, a couple of questions.
So yeah, if anyone's got a question for Tomiwa off the back of that. So we'll go, Tamer's got a question first.
Yes, thanks. And thanks, Tomiwa, for your time. So I'm just wondering what, in terms of psychology and, say controlling emotions, anxieties on the pitch in a big match where you're demanded to perform. Do you learn about this from outside, or is it something internal that you feel is built up, or does it come from the coach? And can you give us an example or two of how you actually use it on the pitch in a match?
Okay, so I think players, I think you'll find a lot of professional athletes that you speak to, they've had to go through a lot to get to where they're at. So they themselves will have their own little kind of psychological things that they'll do on the pitch to help them perform. Over the year, speaking with my sports psychologist, I've learned. So one of the things I do now is we talk about red and blue, and rugby is a very physical sport, but the higher you get, the more you have to think. So it's almost like blue is your kind of, I say hot and cold, but red is your kind of how do I explain it? If you see red as kind of like your aggressive side and blue as your thinking and your thinking side, we talk about reaching the purple. So in a game, you want to be purple at some points. At some points, you probably want to be red whilst you're playing. At some points, you may want to be blue. And it's also about thinking about, am I too red in a certain point in the game? Am I too blue? Am I giving away too many penalties? That kind of thing. That's something that I kind of think about. And it's quite easy to check in a game when there's a stopping play. Am I too red? Am I too blue? That's an example. But they do help you kind of look at different tools that you can use whilst you're playing a game to kind of help you perform and make sure you're staying on track where you need to be. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, great. Thanks, Tomiwa. Thank you.
Anyways.
Cheers, thank you, Tim. So we'll just have one more question then. So Pip's got a hand up. I'll hand over to Pip.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience with all of us. It's really humbling. Thank you. I'm really interested in professional athletes' experiences of work. So I thought it was quite interesting how you have a career as a professional rugby player, but then you're also studying kind of accounting at university. And I wondered, is any support integrated into your club for kind of career development?
I would say, there's definitely more support at the university, as you would expect that. I'd say if that's potentially one thing that the club could do a bit better. I think realistically, there is someone who'd be able to put me in contact with someone, because people know people, and who you know in this world is very important. But there actually isn't a sector that works on that specifically. So I think definitely that is something that the club could almost do better. But yeah, no, as a professional athlete, and especially someone in my position, I'm almost juggling the two on a day-to-day basis. So it's like, so for example, next season's coming up. I have to think about, right, okay, will I be playing at Loughborough? Will I be playing here? And then also, how can I put myself in the best position in 2 years' time when I finish my degree to be able to say to a company, let's say rugby doesn't work out, this is my CV, this is what I've done, potential work experience, stuff like that. So I take it onto myself. I take the responsibility onto myself. But yeah, definitely, it could be a bit better in the sporting sector.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Excellent. Right, that was a brilliant talk there to me, and you know, personally, just I find it really interesting chatting to you, and I could talk about these things all day. But we're kind of we'll just leave it there in terms of time. So I think on behalf of everyone, thank you for giving up your time today, and just, you know, giving a really honest insight into what life looks like as an elite athlete, and balancing being a student as well. So on behalf of all this, thanks, and I think good luck with everything as well, you know. Sounds interesting. Brilliant. So what we have next is we've got a talk on for sports psychology, and a coach talk, and I think Max is going to introduce that in a moment. So we've got a couple of minutes